Thanks. Thank you. So we're going to jump into these policy and advocacy updates. Let's start at the federal level, and nobody's surprised by uh, that there is a shutdown and that we have funding that's now extended to 130, but a lot of decisions need to be made. And there are arts appropriations that we're concerned about and thinking about, and there are education appropriations that we are still holding our breath around. There's a House proposal that's Republican supported that has a lot of cuts in federal education programs, like 15.6%. The Senate proposal keeps things at pretty level. We have a chart we shared last time. I don't want to take the time to share it again because we're waiting to see. And what we need people to do is continue to advocate, and we'll show you how in a minute. Also, we do know that there is still this uncertainty around Title II and teacher preparedness. This is not just about professional learning. This is also about how we're going to be able to recruit teachers. This is the future um, of the field in many ways. Not to be over dramatic, but everything has its impact. And next year, we are talking about possibly a 15% of federal reduction. And what does that look like in New Jersey? Because there will be a trickle down. And we are and as we said last time, we're in a great state. We have a lot of protections in place, but still, a budget cut is a budget cut and has to be managed. I also want to add to this then from what we talked about. We all know that the Department of Ed is being deconstructed, but there was recent, right before Thanksgiving, conversation around declassification of teachers, social workers, and a variety nurses and a variety 11 professionals were declassified. It was really about money and how they get their education funded. It doesn't impact undergraduate, but it does impact masters, and we do know that many of our educators get their masters. They, especially art educators, they get their degree in their art field, and then they get their masters in art. So we are carefully watching that. Um, and let's see what we can still do. So we are still watching the title dollars. And so we still encourage you to take this action. This is a NAFME um, advocacy thing. If you scan this, and I think Jace will probably put the link in here too, so that we can still keep reaching out to Congress. It does not hurt to keep saying, do something about this, watch this. Um, I also brought this up last time, title funding is what's under threat. And NAFME, this organization, the national associations have created the survey. It's a national survey to talk about how you, as a school, are using federal funding. Like how many people are relying on Title I funds. There's so far only 6 New Jersey schools have filled out the survey. I'd like to get that up because that's information that's really hard to collect. The Department of Ed does not have that at its fingertips for us. We would have to, I don't know what we would need to do to get it. We also talked a lot about in this moment, how do we keep our messaging straight? In our earlier meeting, we talked a lot about how do we continue to collectively talk about the value of arts education. Jace will put in the chat 2 briefs that again, I'm on a committee where we've been working on what would be a national conversation that applies also locally. So these are 2 briefs. One is how to talk about the issues at play, and the other is really a unified statement about the value of arts education. To have that at our fingertips is handy. So we want you to make sure you have that in your toolkit. Okay, New Jersey. We're in New Jersey. You've probably been watching some of the lame duck legislation. There are lots of articles about what's going on in different communities, but let's sort of focus on a couple opportunities that we're keeping our eye on. One is we have a new governor, um, and we have uh, she has established transition teams and action teams, and we've been circling people that we know and who we can reach out to. We've written a letter to the governor and her team to say, arts matter in every one of your transition teams. Economic development, transportation, consider arts throughout. We do have some friends on the education transition team, and we've been reaching out to them as well. So if you see those lists and you know anybody on those lists, please reach out to them and remind them about the importance of arts education. You might even share those two briefs. We had a lovely surprise before Thanksgiving where we talked, we saw this Katz legislation, 8, Assemblywoman Katz, 8, A6043, where she's proposing a performing arts education improvement grant program. It's a sketch, and it's a 4-year proposal to provide funding for 10 pilot school districts that would be selected through a process designed by the commissioner, and administrated. There's no mention of money. We have no idea what the dollars look like. It's, just um, an exciting idea. We're following up with the CATS team. Um, there are things in that legislation that are reminiscent of something we proposed to the Joint Committee and Public Schools last June that talks about how we use our model school program and the information we get from our every 5-year census to measure what model schools would look like. So I think we're pretty ready, we are ready to be able to jump in to help them with this legislation. So stay tuned. Um, and I just want to, know that after we have our hot cocoa and watch our movies and do our celebrations, when we come back in January, schools will be beginning that budget process, and we are creating a mini campaign. We have a mini campaign about budget review, but we are leaning more into it in the new year to make sure that families, residents, and administrators know how to read a budget and find out where the arts money is. It's often masked by the teacher salary, which obviously will increase year to year. And, if you dig deep, sometimes, a district might say, look, our arts budget is going up. But if you take out the teacher piece component, you will see that there's a decrease. So we're going to really lean into that and train parents, because it becomes it's easier for community to fight the fight um, than an outsider. That's one thing we have learned. Um, I just want to actually go back. Is there any questions for any of this so far? Oh boy, there's some things in the chat and I may have missed them. No, that's all you. Okay. So let's go on to the other big thing that's happening in the state. If you haven't heard, we're up for new standards. Which means, even if you're running a nonprofit and you're trying to work with a school, what does this mean for you? The good news is that, um, well, the challenging news is that the team who was working on this with the Department of Ed only had the summer to revise it. When we revised them the first time, it was like a 2.5 year process. But the good news there is that we were building off of a 2.5 year process that was very thorough. So the standards were in good shape. And it allowed this team to really focus in on some key things, and that's improving the articulation of the essential skills and knowledge that students have to demonstrate, and the performance expectations, and making sure that they were all aligned with the anchor standards so that it would be easier for teachers to implement. And I'd say not only to implement, but for supervisors to assess if the lessons are meeting the standards. It also, I think, really they were able to take a look at the progression of sequential teaching from, that 1 year, but also from year to year, especially since, we have our, our there's alignment by blocks versus, year to year. So this allowed them to really take some time to make sure that the sequential nature was there. And then there were some like things that were unique to each discipline. So music, for example, they had a coding system that was needed to be improved for ensembles and harmonizing. And the media arts, if you recall 5 years ago, that was all brand new. And so there was a lot and it was really just redundancies that were put in. So they cleaned it up. So I feel really excited about this. And I think we should all feel excited about it. At first, I think we were worried about the short time frame, but now I feel like it allows us to start strong. So they were revealed by on December 3rd. Kira, you may want to put the standards that the department shared in the chat.
I think
And what's and
JC has dropped it in.
it's already in. Great. And if you're interested, there was the school board meeting, the state school board meeting. This is the link to a 3 hour session. I'm going to give you a hint. You only have to watch the last 7 minutes. And that's where the VPA standard conversation is. And what's next is that there will be some testimony. You can sign up for the testimony on December 16th. So there are 5 other subjects that are being reviewed as well, have been updated. And so we're really working to make sure that there is a voice of the arts at every single one of these state school board meetings. You can sign up for 5 minutes. If you are interested in going to any one of these, because if we go to all of them, it'll look like the same group. We'd like to have different people there. I will probably go to the very first one just so I can suss out how they're going and adjust the testimony for others. So let me know if you are interested in testifying, because we want to have that voice of the arts there. And then it'll go through some sort of approval process. Also on the 16th, when they open it up for the public testifying, there will be a written opportunity as well. We've been promised. And then we're waiting. Once it gets approved by the board, then there will be an agreement on when the curriculum needs to align, when they will need, well, each district will have to resubmit their curriculum, but that's sort of TBD. We're trying to, or Shay is trying to make sure that there's enough time between approval and that curriculum thing so we can have an opportunity to do that well. Because one of the um, missed opportunities missed opportunities would be to not really take a look at curriculum again. So this means a lot on our end because over the years, we've built websites around the standards that will need to be updated. The SEL framework, we're going to double check that everything's still aligned. We spent a lot of you participated in 2 years of doing a crosswalk between the standards, but we think that's okay because they're all at the high level. We have built an on-demand course that Kira and many art supervisors worked on, and they're looking at that right now to see how that would need to be adjusted. But the good news is that we don't think it's major. We just need to make sure people feel the confidence in these new in these tools. Um, One of the things we know is going to come out of this, or we suspect might come out of this, is like what are the assessment protocols people are using? Is there any continuity on how arts are being assessed? And maybe we could provide from our supervisors, from our teachers, and learn some of the best practices around that and share them out. And we also see an opportunity to share out curriculum samples um, and tools that can help people, professional learning that might help districts improve their curriculum through, say, a lens of culturally responsive or social emotional learning. And while I'm talking about culturally responsive, I have to like ask people to think about coming, attending this 8-week culturally responsive workout. This will be the 4th year that we've offered it, maybe from Arts in New Jersey. Oh, typically, over 200 people participate. There are 4 Zoom conversations, and it's a really powerful, like Mary Bay, I know you've participated. Um, and it's something, if you've done it before, could do it again, but I would suggest you do it with a team because one of the things that we know even now that doing progressive work, it's easier, it's feels better doing it not isolated, to be the sole person doing it. So bring somebody with you to do this work. And I'm hoping someone's put that in the chat. We also are launching in January the census. Samantha, I was responding to you before this meeting, but you'll hear a little bit now. We think that the memo will go out on January 7th or January 14th, saying that the census is live. Right now, you can go to our website and see the survey worksheet that districts will need to complete. There's timelines, and that just went live today. The census will close the end of February. Quadrant will be working with districts, working to make sure that we get 99.9 school districts responding. That's what we got last time around 5 years ago, so we're aiming for that again. Recommendations will come from this. Now, the census is measuring not only how many students are receiving arts education, it has 11 other indicators. And they're similar indicators from 20 years. So we can sort of see the ups and downs. The last one came during COVID, so we can see how we are responding to in a post-pandemic world and be able to make some recommendations that we will talk through not only with our partners in developing this with the council, but also with all of our partners. Um, and a report will come out in late spring. Um, Somewhere in there will likely be a summit either before or after the report to be determined. Um, We are continuing the work with our inclusion guide. One of the things that came from our conversations is that students with IEPs were being pulled out of arts experiences classes sometimes to attend their IEP course training or activities. And we checked the policy. The policy was fine. It was the implementation. So this guide is going to provide insight, um, Kira, I want to make sure we have time to talk. Kira is leading this effort with a really astounding group of writers and people who are going to review what this folks have written. And so we're excited. We're aiming for spring so that when parents are once again meeting with par with their on their students, their kids' IEPs, that they will have this guide and know how to be proactive. And after our last meeting, town hall, where there was some conversation around teacher recruitment and retainment, and we one thing that came out of that is that there are artists, Joe, maybe you want to go teach right now. What would be that teach in a school versus your own school? What would you do? What would be that process? You can find all that information on the DOE website, but we want to simplify it so you can figure it out. And once we figured that out, we're going to really have conversations with this group, our steering committee, to sort of see what the barriers are to becoming an art educator. Um, so, sort of with all those things in mind, I am curious, is there the policy issues, the standards, is there anything that you think we're missing we could use these opportunities for?
Mary Bay here. I found understanding just the local school budget such an enlightening experience. I know on a national level to understand how budgets are formed and things that they do in the budget and how it affects what goes on in the whole school system would be a great. I don't know whether we do workshops. I don't know how to put it together, but that would be a great experience for our parents in the communities.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Yeah, and I think so, Mary, the key there is I think for us will be trying to be proactive, because some of the federal things I'm not even sure when they're going to get decided because of the lawsuits that are pending, and New Jersey's part of the lawsuits about the Department of Ed and the breakup of the Department of Ed. But it's already done, right? They've already fired all the staffers and things have been redistributed. So I don't know what that would end up looking like, but we can follow the money. Um, and we'll be on a learning curve too.
So that would be a help just to
Yeah.
understand the curve and how the
Mhm.
money fits into the curve. That would
Yeah.
be a great education.
And the parent and Arts and Newark's parent, did you guys get trained on reading the Newark budget?
Yes,
Hmm. And
that was in my class. We
mhm,
that was one of our main portions of education was learning about the budget, going into school, how to ask for the budget, how to
yeah.
read it once they brought it up, how to ask questions about it. Those kind of things were explained.
And the
Um,
reality is that every budget will probably be structured somewhat differently. When I talk to business administrators, they all think that it looks the same, but from what I've understood from people I've asked, that's not so true. So that's something we will work on. I know Patterson has Rosie Grant, who fortunately every year she gets the school budget and she translates it for the parents. But not every district has a Patterson Education Fund.
well,
Yeah.
not all. Well, I'm still trying to understand how the district releases the funds to the non-traditional schools. And once it's gone, they don't have a tracking system. They don't have anything. They just let the money go.
So the other question, you're sort of we're talking
Yeah, I
about
want to
charters.
understand
Yeah,
who's responsible. How do we
right.
get them to report how you're using it?
Yeah.
I can go in and ask questions. They're going to tell me different hoorah things and aha things, but in actuality, when I talk to my grandchildren, it's not true.
Right.
That's just something you telling me to get me out your face.
Well, a couple other things you make me think of. One is, we had some art supervisors who were saying um, they were they had a good budget this year, but districts are freezing their budgets. Is that happening with you, Dan? Or has your arts budget been frozen? Or
They're quick to
It,
reroute budget
yeah, I
money.
mean, I can't really, it's hard for me to say just because we just got relocated to a new space. So so for me to say our budget was reduced, it wouldn't be fair because there was a huge investment spent on moving our district-wide
right,
program. And that was substantial. But in saying that, I mean, this has been years in the like maybe 5 years worth of pushing and advocating, maybe 10, 15 years worth of advocating, but the last 5 years of actual planning and projecting and then actually like implementing with architects and things. So I mean, I couldn't really
yeah.
comment,
And
a
I
little
wasn't
weird.
actually meaning to call out your district either, because I think what people were saying was
All
not
good.
just arts, all budgets, in some cases were being frozen mid-year in anticipation of next year. And because of the trade. I mean, everything is way more expensive to purchase, and so there's been a lot of cautious processes.
That has definitely been seen, and just the transportation budgets, and I know we talked about this towards the end of last year. That has definitely been a huge blow just because of the rising prices of it. Was at first it started with the lack of transportation, lack of bus drivers. Now it's not the lack of drivers, it's just the fees that have gone up and the cost of that.
Right. And we were talking earlier about field trips. Um, those sort of died during COVID, and it's makes it much harder for them to come back with these two things happening. And without other safety issues for schools right now. Um, okay, so we wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about, I prepped you sort of what always ready means, like part of being always ready is knowing what's going on and knowing and sort of reading the tea leaves, or at least getting the risks out on the table so we can make sure we're reading the tea leaves. Um, and so the question really for you, and we want to talk about it, what are you seeing out there that we should maybe be preparing for? And this is sort of a double-barreled question. What opportunities should we advance together? I'm going to stop sharing right now so that we can actually talk about that. We're not going to go into breakouts. We're a small enough group, but really hoping we could identify, hey, Dennis, yes, um, welcome. What are the other things, we that are top of mind?
I can start. Hey everyone, my name is Samantha Clark. My pronouns are she, her. I'm with the New Jersey State Council on the Arts. And Wendy, I just sent this email to you, but I don't, I want to have a one-on-one with you because I always want to have a one-on-one with you, but just for the sake of conversation, I'm hearing a lot from arts organizations who longtime partnerships, schools just aren't calling them back. Programming that has been in schools for years, decades. Schools are saying, nope, we cannot do anything. Organizations that are like, we got free programs. You don't have to pay anything. And schools are still saying no. And, coming from and actually, Dan, you just mentioned the cost of buses. We've actually received some constituent concern about field trips being cut and buses not being paid for, and are there funds, and are there, what can parents do, what can PTOs do, and I wonder, like, even if funds were available for buses and field trips and assembly programs and residencies, are schools in a position to say yes to anything extra? And I put extra in quotes because I don't think they're extra, but it's outside of a typical school day. And I'm just wondering what other folks are hearing.
What about Jersey City?
Yes, I'm feeling that. I mean, specifically, I've been working with Two River for years now with their Have a Seat program. It's not Have a Seat program anymore. I forgot the new name. But yeah, I have no idea why, but I have free tickets. They even offered us a bus allocation to pay for, and I still got denied. When I fought. Honestly, what it's coming down to now is not only funding, but it's just the overwhelming amount of modified schedules due to state testing. And that's been a nightmare. It's just so much, and as a result, the way at least this large district deals with it is, and I don't know if all large districts operate the same way, so I can't speak on behalf of everyone, but it's like instruction is just shut down, and unfortunately, the arts are still referred to as specials, and that's just canceled outright. So with that, when if a program like a Two River program where it's not, we're getting free theater, professional theater, and they're even providing and offering us either full transportation or reduction in cost. Now it's just yeah, but you're within the testing window, so we can't offer that because that's happening during the testing window. And I mean, well, if you look at the testing window that the Department of Ed publishes, it's pretty. I mean, yeah, it's
So,
like, come on.
so Dan, I want to make sure I have this correct because we have an additional test this year that was piloted, but it's not gonna, that's not happening later for you all, or is it? Are you
Are
guys
you
gonna,
referring to the field test that
yeah,
took
the field
place?
test? Uh-huh.
Yeah, no, that already occurred, and
That already
that's
occurred. So
case in point. I mean, like, that are I and Dennis, I know you're familiar with Jersey City's magnet program. Because of the logistics of it, we run almost like a vocational setting. So we get students bussed in from 9, 10 different high schools, and because of how they run it, it's just like they just shut down the program because of the testing window. And each school, because of their size and their bandwidth capacity, has to operate the test and administer the test in different ways that work appropriately for those facilities. So as a result, the testing window basically shuts us down. So I might be a unique situation here, but I do think like
I've heard that.
the state. I mean, I will applaud the day when all standardized tests and state administrative tests will happen on Saturdays and Sundays and take them out of the school day so that we can actually instruct students.
There's just some legislation we could fight for. Right. Um, I so even if we were to sort of map out when the free time is, where somebody could go to a show or have a residency, does the amount of testing mean that the other non-testing time is so precious that you wouldn't be able to do the field trip or have a resident artist in, or
You're asking me? It's a
universal you?
10 pounds into a 5 pound bag then, because
Yeah,
it's like, and that's it. Because there's only, with so much going on when you're looking at a season, and then all of a sudden your season is now, well, reduce everything you do into this new schedule that, you had 180 some days, but now you might have like 75. I'm pulling those numbers out of anywhere, but thin air. But that's really what it's coming down to. So then you're forced to pick and choose between these amazing opportunities that they should not have to pick and choose between.
right. Dennis,
Hi, everybody. I'm not working directly with visiting artists into schools. I'm in a weird position in my life in terms of my role with different districts and groups. But one thing I'm trying
but
to,
past VPA supervisor for many
yes,
years,
yep,
and now
yep.
no longer in the
Um,
district.
lots of past. My first year in education, my starting salary was $8,500. That's how old I am. Um, but my advice now is, can we cut out the middleman when we're trying to set up these relationships? For instance, I've been working with different teachers that I know in the district, in the state, where they've had visiting groups come in for pullouts, um, lessons, workshops, that kind of thing. And because of these learning gaps that are being you know claimed since COVID, pull-out lessons are fewer and further between. I'm painting with a broad brush. So what I'm asking them to do is, rather than have these special times, can you do it during your time with the kids? You don't have to ask for them to be excused. So if you've got a band class and you want to have these lessons during band, have them come in during that time, because the students are already assigned to you for that. Now, that's maybe a little bit different or more challenging or difficult when you have a school-wide assembly that you want to bring in. But if you can have, you know, if you want an exceptional program, you're going to have to try to make exceptions. So if you have a sixth grade block that's all meeting for the arts, because that's their prep period, can you have those guests come in during that time, because they're already scheduled for music, or they're already scheduled for visual arts, or they're already scheduled for dance, theater, whatever that's there. So if we can be a little bit more creative, you know, I always equate it to those spy movies where the lasers are going in every direction. You have to kind of like contort yourself to get through the lasers to get what you want anyway. I'm 40 years in this business, and we always have to validate what it is we freaking do to people who don't know better. And I'm getting a little tired of doing it. But the kids need us to do it, right? So, is there a way for us to kind of eat our cake and have it too? We're not hitting as large a population, maybe. Maybe the other parents go, hey, how come my sixth grade son had this dance group come in, and I have an eighth grader in the school, and she didn't get a chance to see it? Maybe if enough parents start speaking about that, that might be another advocate for us that has, a little bit more, weight in the game, sort of skin in the game, so to speak. Um, and the other
Even
thing
what you're saying, oh, go
I'm
ahead.
sorry.
I just want to say
Yeah,
something and then
absolutely.
go on with your next point, because it reminds me, somebody said at one of these meetings, um, if only kids who are about to get tested could participate in a creative workshop, they would be likely better. They would probably test better,
Yeah,
if only.
amen.
There's a market right there.
Right, and one of the things that one of my quote unquote successes that I will pat myself on the back for with Elizabeth was, it's painstaking, and I hated doing it because I'm not a data person. It doesn't turn me on, but just collect as much of that as possible and bring it to the people who make those decisions to show, kids who are taking. If a child has a band class on Thursday, they're on time to school. They're in school. They behave better in their periods before band because they know they'll get pulled out of band if they can't, if they don't behave well. The students that take visual arts, performing arts in high school, over multiple years show that their attendance rate is higher, their tardiness rate is lower, they are better collaborators, that they're more resilient, they have more grit, all those things that you can measure through surveys, through actual grades, and just keep, inundating them with that kind of, fact, to try to get them to, kind of, it's like Shawshank Redemption with Tim Robbins sending 500 letters to the state librarian to try to get books for his prison library, and after 500, they finally gave him books. We just have to keep being that,
Right.
the story about the guy who's throwing, starfish back into the water, right? And you're like, what are you doing? I'm saving starfish. Yeah, but there's thousands of them. And you go, yeah, but I saved this one, and just keep throwing those starfish. It's tiring, but we just got to keep at it.
Keeping at it.
Well, to jump on your bandwagon there, Dennis, I will just say that the fall brings conference season, and this year Arts at New Jersey did a lot around advancing broad district goals, and using the data, the research, and the beautiful infographics that have been designed, that actually make all that data pretty digestible. And I think, we've had many conversations through the years, through, discussions like this. One of the things I wonder about, and this is a question for the full group, what are the ways in this particular moment that you think we can use that collective voice to lift up, the data that we know is there and available? And it doesn't have to be a dialogue because our time is limited. But if you have an idea, maybe just drop that into the chat. I feel like there are some key pieces that we know we need to activate around, but wondering what do people right now in this moment? Where's the bandwidth? Where's the sort of place that we can meet you, where you already are in doing advocacy work? So maybe that's the question. And again, not for dialogue necessarily, but you could send us any of us an email after the fact if something comes to mind, or drop it into the chat.
Let's see if anyone answered. Ask visual
Things like
performing arts.
performing performance programs. We talked a little bit about the use of programs. We talked a little bit about the use of teachers' social media accounts if they have it. We talked a little bit about the use of school-wide, or district-wide social media accounts. So links to the data you reference, I can drop that into the chat now.
Yeah, I
Well,
mean,
what I like
in the
is,
programs, you know what I mean? Like
yeah,
if I'm going to tomorrow night, I'm going to Long Valley Elementary School, Old Farmers Road School to see my grandson perform. And if I'm a pedestrian and I'm an accountant and my wife's a lawyer, and we go see this concert, if I have a link there that shows, oh, here's the arts data for the state, let me see where Old Farmers Road School is. I have 3 teachers, and this is the budget, and this is, I mean, that it may or may not be an impetus for somebody to click and look and see,
so Dennis,
bypass
you're
the
making
school
me think
administration.
we created a curtain speech last year, I think, to be read, etc. But I wonder if we were to create a program insert that had, some of the infographics, did you know, and some links to get further, or some sort of challenge to find out if, we could ask teachers to insert it. I mean, because you're right now at the holidays, how many families are, you know, Vince, wouldn't that have been great when you went to see your granddaughter if you opened it up and out fell this flyer that said there's research about what you felt about your granddaughter?
URL, something,
Mm-hmm.
because those
Yep.
kinds of things find themselves in the circular file too. But just something, if you have, I know you have student ambassadors now. You've got, and forgive me, I've been kind of on like a sabbatical for my formal advocacy with in terms of attending these meetings and being involved in discussion. But if you've got these ambassadors who can go back to their schools, show up on a concert night and ask, and I'm sure their former teacher would have to give them a minute to speak to the audience. Say, look, I'm a product of this. I'm not a performing arts student, and I'm going to school for business, but I was able to do that because Mr. Paolucci's drama class, and and I got this organization skills and soft people skills through that. And here's a link; it's in your program. The governor's awards are here, and then it just you never know if you pick up one
Right.
person that night, it's one more than you would have if you didn't. Or as a former band director, who had shared concerts. There was always that transition time between putting the choral risers on and taking them off and putting the orchestra kids on. Put a clip up of arts ed stuff. What things to know. Is your school board member a supporter of the arts? Here's the arts research for that. Just click, and it takes. People aren't watching this. Middle school kids move risers. They're watching this, and the band directors, and I'm thinking the teachers would love to have something like that to call upon, because it just it's a better transition, and you get information out, and you never
Yeah.
know.
Monifa.
Yeah, Dennis, to piggyback on what you're saying, we do have these youth ambassadors through our youth council, and that is one of the, thank you, Dan. That's one of their projects. They established public relations teams in their schools, approaching their arts educators and actually doing all of the work that you have just said. In our program, we go through several ways in which they can pretty much market and promote what their arts educator is actually doing. But I also think, because these suggestions for arts educators, I mean, the time is non-existent. It's really hard to pivot in the middle of a semester and change things now. Thinking of ways, I don't know if it's summertime, where I'm thinking ideas of training or working with arts educators and helping them to develop their promotional skills. You know what I mean? Their marketing skills and for their programs. Um, to work on that value campaign, because we're tired of having to prove this again and again. I hear you, Dennis. It's like really old. But it's like how do you fit that in for the educators, because that is a marketing role for them for their program. That is a whole other job. It truly, truly is. Um, but maybe, Wendy team, maybe there are ways we can figure out ways when they're on break or something like that. Maybe it's like, hey, a year ahead of time, you're gonna journal these ideas right here. You're gonna think about how you can slowly start to implement them, that ways that make sense for your program. You mentioned attending school board. That is a huge project in our youth council. They all must visit, they must report back. Last cohort, some of them actually spoke about their work. So there are so many other tools and different ways, but it's just getting used to that, or like being confident in that muscle to be able to do that. And then maybe gathering their own, an arts educator gathering their own students who are really passionate and want to be vocal like that, who would be good as, the town crier of what we're doing in a program. But that's definitely takes extra planning ahead of time before their year would even start, on how they would insert that.
And
Um,
we could get started on that, Monifa, in little
yes.
ways, right? Even in,
Hmm.
the things we currently do, like your Insta Lives, one of the questions could be, how are you promoting? And we could be gathering promising practices
Hmm.
around that. Um,
Yeah, it could be a simple meeting
mhm, right.
during the summer for them, but let them know way in advance. Like, hey, we're gonna have
Yeah.
these conversations, to help
Summer.
help y'all add this to your
Mhm,
preparation for
mhm,
your curriculum and lessons.
yeah,
I don't think it's a hard thing. I think it's just
yeah.
pre-planning, getting ahead of the big snowball of everything.
Right.
Well,
So we have 4 minutes left. I want to see if there are any other thoughts here that are on your
I
mind.
kind of
Yeah.
I kind of had a side conversation there with Kira in the chat about a presence at the upcoming NJMEA conference in February, which I unfortunately will not be able to attend. And I'm wondering if that's an opportunity for teachers to show an interest in having a member of their student body be an ambassador for that school to Arts Ed. And then that's your conduit into that school to get information um, for their concert programs, for their, um, just for spreading the word about what's happening. You know what I mean? This way you don't have this, I know you have a formal board or students, you have a sitting board, but can we have these satellite students that, the board, your student board is in contact with, um, so they can be the ones that ensure that this information gets into the program, that maybe that's the spokesperson at their concert, on the boot on their ground, so you don't have to, you know, assign people to that performance or that school or
hmm
that district.
We talked about it yesterday at the we're going to be at the NJMEA for the Governor's Awards. They're giving their Governor's Awards out at the conference gala, sort of their big celebration. And we did talk about what does it look like if we helped, have a template for students to self-promote too, and we were talking about how adults aren't very good at this. Nobody is very good at self-promoting. But to talk about it not in terms of promoting just yourself, but that you're promoting the power of arts, you're promoting your teacher, you're promoting the commitment of the school board to arts education. It makes it easier to promote in some ways. Um, so I'm hearing a really strong thread here of what we can do. Did you unmute Vince on purpose?
Yes, I did. I couldn't agree more with everything that's been said. And what I want to contribute is that personal stories, either from families, kids, parents, or together, have the most impact on Board of Ed members, but also at the school level. And I think that having when there's it was a reference to data before. And local data, but also anecdotal data also helps. Um, all too often, having worked with boards for over a decade, um, uh, they're all over the place with what they actually have an understanding. And it's not a criticism, it's just an observation. And rather than worry about the reasons that is, it's finding ways and that personal touch, but on a consistent basis.
Mm-hmm. We had an interesting conversation early this morning too about why are why are young kids not taking art or pursuing art? And it was sort of this, some teacher maybe made them feel like they can't draw or sing or play the violin or whatever. I don't want to, I'm not villainizing teachers here, but we all we all know when we're promoting the arts, we always meet someone who says in their adult form, I can't fill in the blank. And that they learned that somewhere along the way. Um, and the educator was saying that maybe it has to do with the fact that we focus so much on the performance part of it that that's what maybe scares some kids away from it, that they are, that's what being an artist is you got to get to there when there's so many actual opportunities in between, um, you know, picking up a violin and actually being any good in an orchestra that you can learn. That sort of stopped me in my tracks. So it makes me wonder just how do we get the data on the in between moments? Um,
I know a lot of what we talked about in those sessions where we were focusing on like reaching school-wide goals or district-wide goals was leaning into the responding and the connecting standards because that speaks very much to the in-between piece. It's not about the artistic product as much as it is about the process. And so those data points that can speak to the process and we can connect it directly to those learning standards in responding and connecting particularly might be a conversation starter. Not that it ends there, but a conversation starter.
Right.
I'm also thinking about the need for professional learning in giving students feedback. Um, and it's not just in the arts. I was a writing teacher for years, and a number of kids that I worked with who were convinced they couldn't write a sentence, like a story or a narrative, significant, because they were just not recognized as writers working on their craft.
Yeah. I wanted to add to that as well. Sometimes it's also a how your program is structured. If you got a program year after year and it's consistently known for its performance element, it's an award winner, it's this, it's that, and you may have another arts class where, it's the general feed-in arts class, no one, maybe that educator is asking them, would you like to perform? Would you like to showcase this? But you don't have to. It could be as simple as that, being mindful to ask that question and not assume that everybody wants to perform, you know, and be out there. That was one question, unfortunately, because they would use my class as a physical education credit. I would never recommend that. You know, I would get any and everyone in the high school, and everybody doesn't want to be on the stage, but they might want to try it, you know, and they might want to work up their courage to get to that point. So I think just being mindful, and for educators to just ask, but that's also again a reframing. What kind of program do you have? What is the administration? What are the expectations they're setting for you?
Right.
There's a whole spectrum in between that, that could be
Right. And
leading
this is
towards.
where our associations can be helpful in many ways, and us, because in so many schools, you're the only one. You're the only art teacher. You're the only music educator. You're alone trying to make a difference.
And that's Mary Bay here. That's not true. They're not alone. But I think the mindset needs to be when you hear the downtrodden, you work to, all right, like I used to run into people who say, I can't sing. I say, can you
Mhm.
talk? Say, yeah. So, well, then if you can talk, we'll find a note that you can hold. And once you hold that note, you can teach yourself that you can sing. So it's just, reversing the thought process. And I don't know how we'll get that in the heads of the teachers that make the children feel like it's not for them. But art is for everyone. Art in, art of, art for, art with. It fits into everything that they do. And if we can get the children to see it that way, the enthusiasm will rise.
Yeah. Well, we are 5 minutes over, and I hate to end this conversation, but I will just say we are 5 minutes over, and if you need to hop off, but we'll happy to stay on a little longer if you want to talk through anything else. And we will try to capture. Oh yes, thanks for also sharing this. We're gonna put it out on socials on Friday, but Young Audiences had a great write up by WHYY for one of their South Jersey engagements, but it's also a comprehensive um, thumbs up for the arts. The writer did an excellent job of interviewing people. So um, thanks for putting that in there, Kira.
Mary,
Also, because of the focus on the student's direct experience. Sorry, Monifa, go ahead.
no, that's okay. Mary's story reminds me of I used to teach rhythm tap dance, one of the things. And all the kids are, I can't dance, I can't dance. Well, there's this beginner dance, we wouldn't perform it, that I would teach them called the Cole Stroll and from Honey Coles. And
Mhm.
the line is if you could walk, you could tap dance. And now the
Mhm.
whole thing started in a circle by walking. And then it
Mhm.
goes to a heel toe, and then it progresses into basic motor coordination, but arranged just ever so slightly in a way that's super pedestrian, but I'm tap dancing, but I didn't think that could
Mhm.
work. So
Mhm.
it's again how you look in what you're teaching to bring them along and address them where they're at. So again, that's another conversation of teaching to where
Mhm.
they're at,
Mhm. Mhm.
Again, depending on what you're attracting, if you're getting the kids who already want to be in, fame, I want to live forever, that's a whole other thing. I didn't have those students. So,
Right. And yeah, I mean, kids are performing on TikTok and, they're probably not in a class doing that, but they find it. How do we capture that? Well, thank you all. Samantha, I will still write you back on a couple other things. I think you got mostly the answer. Maybe we just schedule a one-on-one day. But thank you all, and I hope you all have a wonderful holiday season and new year if we don't see each other beforehand. And we will send out some notes on this, and thank you all. Thanks, team. Good to
bye.
see you, Dennis. It's been too long.
Thank you, Wendy. It's good to start to get back, and I promise to do the best I can to